My name is Tyler Bublitz, and welcome to this special 400th episode podcast. I am really excited to have you here. I'm really excited to talk to you because I feel like if you're taking the time to listen to these, you're one of the true loyal listeners. You're the ones who really enjoy this week after week, and I have to first and foremost thank you. Thank you for tuning in week after week. I really enjoy it. I enjoy being able to converse and give you different thoughts, give you some different ideas, see how potentially science and faith can continue to work together more and more, looking at the scriptures together and being able to do that. I really do enjoy that. And I'm really thankful to have a small community, but a community that we're able to do that week after week. And I really enjoy that. So this podcast is going to be a little bit free flowing. There's going to be a few things that I'm going to kind of talk about a little bit more. I know in certain years I've kind of done this a little bit more around the birthday one where I'll get a little bit deeper about things, but I feel like there's enough separation between now and the end of the year that I might as well give you a little bit of a peek behind the curtain of what's kind of been going on, what's some things that I've been thinking about, and some changes that I've been doing. There's been a couple things that I've drastically changed here in even the last few weeks. And I figure you should be aware of it and you should know about it. And we'll talk about some of the reasons on why. And when I'm, working within the constraints of my podcast, or sometimes I just can't get everything in. So this is one of those places where I can talk a little bit more about it, a little bit more free. So first and foremost, there's been a couple changes and a couple big things that have happened. So let's talk about it. We'll talk about one of the things that have changed, and maybe people recognize it, maybe not. So over the last couple years, on the different social media channels, I have been every Wednesday and Thursday putting out like a post, doing kind of a Wonder Wednesday, so making the question into a picture format, and then a Throwback Thursday, so trying to show the different times that we've gone through texts and putting that into a picture. And then Fridays, I've been trying, most Fridays, taking an audiogram or a snippet of the podcast and putting that out there. And the last couple of weeks, I've stopped doing that. And part of it has been just for my own mental health, and especially for my wife's mental health. I think one of the things that I have been asked, and it's one of the things that at times I don't like to admit, is how much time the podcast really takes. Especially when I was doing all these different posts and trying to snip everything, it was probably easily getting to 10 plus hours a week. And when I'm not working within a church, so there's a little bit more work that it takes because I'm not just going to a text study or able to just sit down and read the text. There's just a little bit more work there. Additionally, doing all these additional posts and things, there isn't just the upload process and I click submit and I send it to you guys, or I put it up and then it's done. There was always, okay, now I got Wednesday, now I got Thursday, now I got Friday, now I got Sunday posts in certain spots. And this constant always feeling I'm on a clock, going on a trip or a vacation. Okay, how much stuff can I get done ahead of time? How many times can I get different things done? And even to, talk about even spending time with family. It just got to be a lot consistently all the time. And the person who I have to thank who has felt the brunt of it easily is my wife. She has been truthful. She's been honest. She's been talking about how it wears on her. And so it was time. It was a time to kind of step back from that for a little while. I know all the photos that I think except one, which was my wife's, all the other photos that I posted were all my own work. And additional thing on why I kind of slowed down with that is I haven't even had really time to go and take more pictures or be able to really do that outside of some very rare occasions. So I just needed to step back from that. And so that's one thing that I've kind of taken a step back on, and it was a big change. And I'm not saying I'm not going to come back to something like that in the future, but at this time in this season, I needed to step back there. And to be blunt and to be honest, the last month has been kind of crazy with getting the Dr. Boris episode out. That's been hanging for a long time. There was a lot of behind the scenes work on that. There was some audio things that I had to clean up, and then especially if you watch the YouTube version, which I'd highly recommend checking out, there was a lot of little things that I was dropping in, some additional photos, different context of things, just to kind of try to make it a little bit more interactive. It's something I really enjoyed, but again, it took a lot more work and effort than I anticipated. And so it took a while to get that done, and it was something that I'm really happy with what came out. I'm thankful for the people who continue to encourage me to help me get that across the finish line. But it was a lot of work. And so there's things where it's like, I want to do more of that. I really hope you are enjoying that. I'd really like some of your feedback on that. It's something that I would like to look into a little bit more. And like I stated, there's a few people that I know I'm planning on reaching out to get some more interviews of. And I've even had a couple people talking like, you should reach out to this person, or I have connections to this person would be good. So it's something that is running across my mind, and I really would like to do that. But in order to do that, that was also part of the reason why I needed to pull back on some of the different things that I'm doing with the podcast in itself. And honestly, if I was thinking a month ago, there was aspects where this year has been really hard. Just with, okay, I changed jobs, and, I've been in that job a little over a year now. And, there's just expectations, things that are going on with that, making sure that that's happening, trying to make sure I'm spending time with my wife and talking for us about different aspects of what we're wanting our life to look like, and trying to do this podcast. And especially with how much time I was putting into it, it got hard. There were moments here in this last year where I've kind of been wondering, like, how long should I keep going with this? And it's been a very difficult thing for me to be thinking about, because there's a huge need that I still feel like that especially the American church, but the worldwide church needs to be addressing and talking about. And I think science is a major aspect of that. And yet I really haven't seen it shown, talked about consistently at all. And it's frustrating to me. So I know there's a need for this, but figuring out how to do that, figuring out how to advertise that, figuring out how to have more people hearing this, figuring out how to get people beyond the aspect of I listen to a few, or being able to share it and have conversation about it. That's one thing I really do wish. I have some people who are great about every week reaching out to me, letting me know what they're thinking, what their response to the question are, and I am so appreciative of those people. They really help on those difficult weeks. You keep going. But I also really had hoped, and still hope, that in some way we can make it so that there's more of a community aspect to this, that there's more interaction back and forth, and I haven't quite figured that out. So if you have ideas or suggestions with that, I would love to hear that. But I honestly have had moments this last year where it's like, how much longer should I really keep going? In December, at the end of the year, will be 8 years of doing this. And it's been a significant part of my life, a long part of my life now of doing this. And it's just the question of, at times, is this a season, or is this something that I keep going in? And I will say, letting go of some of the additional post things has really helped me feel a little bit more refreshed, and I've been needing that for sure. I've been needing kind of that reset, that refresh, and that's been really helpful. And so I'm really encouraged by that, and I am really encouraged by getting the Dr. Boris episode out there and being able to share that, and having some ideas on what to do potentially for a few others, and get some feedback on that would be fantastic, and see where we go with that, and kind of have that continue going on the side as well. So I'm really excited about that. And again, if you know anybody who is maybe a designer or something of that nature, I'd love to figure out some type of secondary logo just for the Talkin' Faith and Science podcast, and see what we can come up with that. But that's still, in my mind, a little bit down the road. I need to get a few more episodes out before we really start playing around with that. One of the other things that I have been working on over this year, and I'm hoping soon, I'm looking at doing some additional tech upgrades. I'm looking at upgrading the microphone. So I've used the same microphone now for 8 years. It's been good. It's a good low-level microphone. It's a Blue Yeti microphone I've used for now almost 8 years. but I'm making hopefully a little bit step up, and part of it's a little bit, yes, I'm a bit of a gearhead with different things, but part of it is also I'm hoping in the editing process, just with some pops and different things, that I'm able to get some of that out and hopefully get a little bit cleaner audio. I know there's been a couple weeks, even in the last few weeks, where I've been a little disappointed where I haven't quite got the audio as good as I would like it. And I know that's been one of the early reviews back with the Dr. Boris podcast, and I can agree. There was a lot of different sound things that I was working on with that to try to get things better. And again, with upgrading some of the hardware, one of them being a soundboard, I'm hoping that I can do some adjusting of levels right there on the fly to help with some of that stuff in the future. Hoping that potentially when I'm doing some of those, I'll end up having some of those in person, which should make it even a little bit easier. And some of the mic choices that I'm making with that is to help with some of that stuff. So know that that type of stuff is coming, but it's been something that I have been thinking about a lot. One of the things I know I dropped in one of the teasers that I know I've thought about, and I'm fairly confident I've never really stated. I've used the same intro outro music now for basically 8 years, and outside of the Talkin' Faith and Science podcast, I did find some different files for that, and probably will need to dig those up so I can keep that consistent. The intro, I try putting it in the same spot, but I always will drop the same outro music in the same spot. And there is always, right at the end of the clip, there is this, as it's kind of slowly fading away, there's this suddenly this little chord that just out of nowhere just kind of pops up that's a little bit more flowery, a little bit louder. And so I always do that after a maze, You Through Science. And I've done that on purpose, and I don't know if anyone's ever noticed. I just find it kind of a fitting way that it amazes me to have something where you anticipate something and all of a sudden there's this little bit of a magical chord. I've always thought that that's been a fun tie-in, and it's something that I've been meaning to say for quite literally years now, and I don't know if I've ever said it on a podcast. So there's your fun little tidbit with that. One of the other things too that I have contemplated too, as I've kind of talked about, there's a lot of hours that go into this podcast. And one of the things that I really would like to do is figure out some way to make this so that there's a little bit of income coming in just to kind of help offset some costs. There's some different costs that I incur with just hosting the podcast and not even necessarily looking at my time per se, but I am kind of thinking around some of the ideas, and I would love to hear, again, some feedback on this. Looking at something like a Patreon, or there's other ones that have a little bit lower fees, so it's a win-win for both of us. You know, the aspect of more going toward me, and then you don't have to feel like you need to cover as much. But would that be something that you would be willing to do? I know there's been a couple people when I've mentioned that where they're like, yeah, I could look at doing something like that. You know, if you want to put it toward a tithe, if you want to put it toward giving, either way, I'd be flattered. It's something, though, that I've contemplated. I have not figured that all out. The other thing, too, is I've always kind of in the back of my head kind of flirted around with the idea of it'd be kind of fun to do some merch stuff. And is that something that people would be interested in? I know one that I would really love for myself personally, if you're a super long time listener, back when it was email only podcast, there was a logo that I used for that. And actually, if you look back in the YouTube videos, the first 3 years, I purposely used that logo because that's the logo that I was using at that point. So I have that old logo, and then I have my current logo that I've been using. And so I've always thought it'd be kind of cool to have those on a coffee mug or something of that nature. I know for me, I have one embroidered shirt with the logo for when I've gone down to like Gus Davis and done some presentations and stuff. I know I've been stopped in the airport a few times when I've worn it. So I would really appreciate feedback. Is that something that people would be interested in? Is that something that's curious where it's like, yeah, that'd be fun? I would love to hear feedback. And then what type of product would you be wanting to look at? And if you have experience with that, who have you used and what's been your success rate? I haven't done a ton of research into that at all, but it's just something that's kind of crossed my mind. And again, same with if you're thinking, yeah, I would love to give to you in some form or fashion. What different platforms would you guys prefer on that type of thing? Or where have you done that type of stuff and how has it been? I'm very new with a lot of that aspect of things. So it's just something that's kind of crossed my mind. I know for me, and this is something that is kind of in the back of my head, I really want to get to 500 episodes for sure. But I also, especially here these last few weeks with kind of just doing the podcast has been really energizing for me. And it allows me a little bit more mental capacity to think about some of these interview podcasts or different things that I could potentially do. So again, I would love to hear different ideas or possibilities or things that you're thinking about where it's like, oh, it'd be really cool if you did this. This would be a great time to reach out and give me some of those and see what you're thinking about, what you're considering and going through with that. As I'm kind of getting toward the end of what I probably have to say here, I just want to, again, thank you. And a lot of thanks to my wife, again, for supporting me, going through this with me. I know it's a little bit crazy and a little bit chaotic, but I love you that you're willing to put up with this crazy ministry thing that I do. And my family and her family, there's time where I will literally go in to edit and just their appreciation of them giving me the time to be able to do that and the encouragement that they give me with that stuff. It's so valuable, so important, and I thank you so much for that. I will say I've gotten used to doing this, but it is really weird when you think about it that I sit here in a room and record and just talk basically to myself and in trust that there's someone else on the other side who wants to listen to what I have to say. And I'm really thankful that you do that. And I'm also really thankful, and it was a little nerve-wracking, being able to record YouTube videos and doing a video podcast with somebody was super awesome. I am really excited about what that potentially could do, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. And I want to make sure that I'm keep doing what we're doing with the podcast in and of itself and make sure that we're still doing that well. One final thing also that I will throw out there, and again, if you've gotten this deep, you're a loyal listener, and I really want to hear, again, the feedback to a lot of these different things, but especially here, I've also thought about, do I look at using a different website than what I have been? Something that, what I would love to do, and I know it would take a lot of work, but I'm curious on the other side, is this going to be useful? So hear me out on this. That we'd have a podcast, and that, yes, like the top 10 podcasts or more recent podcasts, and especially now that I've also dropped in the Talkin' Faith and Science, that maybe we separate those two out and it shows it on the screen, and heck, maybe it even drops in the YouTube links or whatever. But one of the things that I've kind of always wanted to do is to have within the website a spot where you could search by book of the Bible, and even maybe by chapter. So, for instance, this last week we went through Luke chapter 14. And yes, I link when I've talked about that text in particular before. But what if you were wanting to, that you were reading through like Luke 12 through 14, and you weren't following the Revised Common Lectionary? You were just wanting the different times that I've talked about those texts, that I would be able to figure out a way of like listing all the different times, maybe even in order, potentially, I don't know, of all the different times that I've talked about the different texts, or these are the different texts that I've talked about in order and the different episodes that are associated with those. So you can see, oh, I've talked on, I'm just throwing this out there, Luke chapter 14, the first 12 verses 3 times, and here are the different podcasts that I've covered that in. So kind of making like a living encyclopedia that way. If you're a type of person that isn't following the Revised Common Lectionary, I could see that being really helpful. And even for me, going through and being able to, have I talked about and seeing what parts of Scripture have I actually touched on with different podcasts, and what parts of Scripture are there holes in? You know, there's also been in the way depths of my mind, and I'm not anywhere near being able to do something like this right now. I would love to do like the narrative lectionary, which goes through a little bit more chronologically it's a 4-year cycle, if I'm remembering correctly, and it's only about 9 months long. So I would love to potentially look into doing something like that at some point. But again, that's potentially way down the road. But just, I'm kind of curious, is that something that's worth pursuing? Is that something worth putting some, of the cash or different things into? And again, this kind of ties back into the donation conversation. I mean, this would be, again, me investing into this podcast because I'm seeing something that's of value, and I'm hoping that you on the other end are seeing this something of value as well and continue to listen. So is that something that would be useful to you? Again, these are just a lot of ideas that are running through my head, and I would just really enjoy hearing your thoughts and concerns and things that you enjoy. It's crazy to me to start thinking about just 8 years of doing this soon, and it being a significant part of my life now, that it's going to be getting very close to 25% of my life I've been doing this podcast. And it is something that I hold very close to me. It's something that is really important to me, and I've grown a lot. There's been a lot of things that have gone on in my life. There's a lot of things that we've been able to capture together, a lot of things that we've talked about together, and I am really appreciative of that. I've told some of my closest friends, one of the things that if I get blessed with the blessing of children, one of the things that I will always be able to give them is they get to hear where their father's faith was in his late 20s and early 30s. They can hear where my head was at as we went through the pandemic and looking through scripture and trying to process everything, and me trying to make sure I don't get too caught up in the headlines, but also there were definitely times where we got into that, hearing some of the different emotions as things went on. And there's a lot of hidden messages that are buried within these podcasts, and many of them I know if I went back and listened to, I could tell you different things that were going on. And if there is something that was directed to a specific person or not that was in there, it's just, as you do this more and more, you do that type of thing. And especially when you find this small place where I can do this week after week. I do appreciate how much we get to spread around the globe, which is still hard for my head to wrap my head around, really, honestly, when I look at all the different places that I'm seeing this podcast being listened to, and thinking about just if I could go back and talk to myself when I first started this podcast and letting myself know what was going to be possible by the end of this, where we're at right now, not even where we're going to fully end this thing, I don't think I would believe it. I don't think I would be able to wrap my head around that. And so, again, it's amazing to me, and I do see it as a ministry. I see it as something that we get to touch lives in a different way than a lot of people touch lives, and I'm not downplaying. It's just it's a different type of ministry than a lot of other ministries out there. And for me, I don't necessarily get to see the results. I don't necessarily get to see what is all happening from the words that I'm saying on a microphone in northern Minnesota, and how that's affecting things all around the United States and all around the world from what I'm saying. I will say I would love if you ever do use some of my stuff in a sermon or something. I would love to just hear about it, even just shooting me an email, or if you do have a recording of it, I would love to hear it. To me, there is nothing that warms my heart more, honestly, than knowing that I was able to help somebody else with a sermon or a Bible study, or help them deepen their faith in some way from what I'm understanding and how I'm connecting faith and God together and science and how that's all coming together. There is nothing to me that's a better feeling. And there's been a couple times where I've gotten to sit in a church pew and listen to a pastor preach and bring up something small that I brought up in my podcast and tie it into their sermon. And there's no better feeling, honestly. Just that I'm able to help make that connection for them to be able to help bring it to other people. It's amazing. And that's something for me that feeling is worth however many hours, the late nights, the long hours that I've put into this for 30 seconds here and there. It's worth it. And I love that aspect of this weird job that I do. And so I am so thankful for that aspect of it. So I think that's enough ramblings. There's a lot of questions that I gave you. I gave you a little bit of behind the scenes. I am hoping here that hopefully I can get a little bit of a hardware upgrade here in the next few weeks and see if you notice. I'll probably wait a few weeks before I say anything in the podcast. I kind of like doing that type of thing. But you'll be on the inside. You can be listening for it. It should be coming soon. And see if you guys can hear any difference. I'd love to hear if you have anything there. So I think we've gotten to the point where we probably should start wrapping this thing up. So we'll wrap this up as we always do. I pray God blesses you through your faith and amazes you through science. Did you hear it? Yeah, it's neat, isn't it, right? And thank you again so much. I appreciate each and every single one of you. And thank you for coming along with me for this journey. And I look forward to many more years of us continuing on this journey together.